Hi guys, Jared here. This is a daily video update that's going to take place of our wrap-up session today. I've got some travel situations to wrap up here, so we will have to suffice with a video today for the wrap-up, but there are plenty of great things to talk about, and we will cover all the same things that we would in a typical wrap-up session. Okay, the things I want to cover real quick is the start of the week here, so we need to look and see some of the upcoming news. As we know, the biggest of the big deals is Wednesday. That's really the tell-all of kind of everything, and that's the FOMC. This is the meeting that everyone is expecting to hear more about tapering, to get kind of the definite, is tapering going to happen now, or will it be pushed off to December? And so this is a pretty important one. A lot will depend on the FOMC news this coming Wednesday. For the rest of the day today, we have some meeting minutes from Australia Central Bank. That will be in several hours, about 9 hours or so from now. Or excuse me, 6 hours from now. And then likewise, we've got coming up on Tuesday some German zoo. That's always a little bit of a mover. The CPI for the UK can be a bit of a mover. Some Canadian news, manufacturing sales, and core CPI for the U.S. So a couple of decent announcements, and of course we'll be on live Tuesday morning to kind of discuss all of that. But then Wednesday again is where so much is going to be decided and where so much matters, and that's going to really give us a better idea on what we can expect with some of these setups. Now remember, we've got big gaps. You can see the euro dollar, pound dollar, Aussie dollar, and even the Aussie yen had a little bit of a gap. Most of the yen pairs don't have too much of a gap. Dollar CAD had a bit of a gap. Euro Aussie had a little bit of a gap. So we had some kind of random gaps in there, but it was mostly US dollar pairs because of one of the potential replacements for Bernanke has dropped out of the running, and so that kind of really shocked the markets. We'll see how much it shocked the markets, but there was definitely some shock there. Now, this is the euro dollar. This was one thing that I was talking about all week last week, especially going into the weekend, and even Friday morning I mentioned this. 133.25. If the market breaks above that, expect some movement. Of course, we had a big gap above 133.25, and it came all the way up to this high here. We topped out several hours ago at about 133.85. So we exceeded that level by a bunch. It left us with a missed weekly pivot and a wide open gap here. We've got to get down. Oh, let's see. There's still 35 pips worth of gap that needs to be filled. And I think that will get filled much sooner than later. Something important to remember as far as the overall picture of this euro dollar goes, what can we expect? How should we expect these setups to go, especially with the coming Fed news and so on? And we can see that gap right there. We can see some nice price rejection. You can see it a little bit better on the 4-hour chart. Some nice big shooting stars here telling us that the market just doesn't want to go higher. Remember, our high of 134.50 is easily holding, and even 134.00 is fairly easily holding. So again, we got into 133.85, but that was it, and now we're coming right back down to this mid 133.00 area and even below. So I'm still leaning towards the bearish side. I think this was a big, kind of push for extremes. Very oftentimes going into big announcements, big Fed news and so on, we see markets move in one big extreme direction just to reverse off major levels, and I could very much see that being the case here. I could see all of these things spiking up, having the Fed come out and say tapering is going to happen in a semi-serious way, and have all of these pairs be able to reverse off these highs with lots and lots of room to go down. So for the meantime, I think there's going to be good opportunities. We can see right here that this euro dollar is currently about 40, almost 50 pips, a little over 45 pips from that high. I think we'd be okay with shorting against this high for some short-term runs into that weekly pivot point and opportunities to fill that gap. It's already done that a little bit, but I think if we get another little spike up here, let's look to short against 133.85, targeting the weekly pivot and ultimately targeting filling this gap on the euro dollar. So that's what I'll be looking for there. Pound dollar has done something pretty interesting as well. The pound dollar, remember, we've talked about some of these upper levels and the fact that 160 seems to be kind of the big level to watch, the big one to keep an eye on. Now you can see that this weekly, now this doesn't mean too much on Monday what the weekly chart is doing, but it's still worth keeping an eye on. Getting a little bit of a reversal candle starting on the weekly chart there. The 4-hour or the daily chart's also giving us some reversal. We have some gap to fill. We can see some big shooting stars as well here on the 4-hour chart and missed weekly pivot. Now remember, the pound dollar has 2 missed weekly pivots now. So we have the weekly pivot from last week week, which is a long ways away, and then our weekly pivot from this week. So the pound dollar has some pretty interesting bearish tones potentially as well. So I'm looking for the same thing. I'm looking to find opportunities to short against this weekly high. Again, same type of thing. We're about 60 pips or so off of the weekly high. Pound dollar, the big level is 160, and again, the pound dollar was able to fairly easily stay below 160. And so even though it's kind of bounced around up here, it's below that 160 and it's starting to head back down. So let's look for opportunities to short against this high, targeting the weekly pivot. The gap has gotten pretty close to being filled. Within a little over 20 pips, but it's still left open, and we still have this missed weekly pivot. We have 2 missed weekly pivots now. So let's look for opportunities to short against this high, targeting that weekly pivot and filling the gap. Aussie dollar has done something slightly different, but very much the same in that it's gapped up hugely, huge gap up here, and then it's come all the way. If you go to the weekly chart, you can see that if you go back to our October low of last year, the Aussie dollar really just rejected, and actually that was the entire low of all of 2011, but it was just almost to the exact pip the low of October in 2011. And so the Aussie dollar had spiked up, hit that, and then it's, we're seeing some pretty decent price rejection off of that level. You can see a lot of these. Here's our daily chart. There's a nice shooting star, 2 shooting stars there. So there's definitely a lot of stuff going on at that 93.80 area. One big thing that's pretty important, though, if we look at this range on the weekly chart here, you can see that it opened above the 23% fib and has gone halfway to that 38. So it makes me believe that we've got a fairly easy run into that 9,500 area and even 9,600 on the Aussie dollar. So getting to that 38, we're going to have a lot of resistance at the 200 moving average, but that 38% fib and that 95.10 spot is going to be a really good one to watch. Big double bottom there, nice rally into that. And the Aussie dollar definitely is due for a little bit of retracement, so we'll see how the Fed news works out for it. We've just about reached this weekly pivot, but we still have tons of gap left to fill. Here's our gap, and we've got still 58 or so pips. We're only 5 or 10 pips from the weekly pivot right now, but again, I'm going to be looking for opportunities to short against this high to come down and fill this gap and make those moves in that direction. I think we've got a good opportunity for it. But the Aussie dollar looks like it might be a better one to be looking for that retracement, for that move down, and opportunities to get long a little bit lower, and we'll talk about some of that. But for the moment, as we go into the Fed news and so on, I'm going to be looking to short against this high. Over the next day, 24 hours, 48 hours, short against that high, target weekly pivots, target gaps. So far, Aussie yen is kind of chopping around. The yen pairs are just chopping around a little bit. There's not too much I'm going to do on the yen pairs over the next little while. Pound yen is very just choppy. No big, nothing big to look at there. We do have the missed weekly pivot. And the pound yen has come back and hit that 38% fib, meaning that we probably have a very good chance of it hitting that 50 at 156.30 area, but I'm not too terribly excited. Look for opportunities to trade the break of the weekly low on the pound yen. And again, I'm not doing too much on the Aussie yen. Euro yen, same thing. It's just kind of chopping around. I'm not too excited about anything on the euro yen at this point, but that could change shortly. We do have a nice gap that needs to be filled there on the euro yen, which these are all kind of telltale clues of what might be in the works with coming Fed news. These things could all be making big, huge runs down off of these semi-extreme highs of the last little while. We'll have more on gold as we go. The dollar CAD, same thing. It gapped down and it's coming right back up to that weekly pivot. We've had a dollar CAD trade running for quite some time, and it's just coming right back up into that area. Not doing too much on dollar CAD. Aussie yen, or excuse me, Euro Aussie. Be pretty careful about this one. I'm not doing too much there yet. It's really kind of a messy looking situation. We do have some missed weekly pivots. We still have the missed weekly pivot of this week and of last week, so there are opportunities there, but I'm going to be really cautious on the Aussie, Euro Aussie for now. Same thing on pound Swiss franc. We have missed weekly pivots on Euro CAD and Euro New Zealand, and I'm just kind of sitting those out. So my focus probably right now is Euro dollar, pound dollar, Aussie dollar, a little bit on the pound yen. and probably a little bit on the dollar CAD. So good luck with everything. I will have more updates coming, and we will trade all of this stuff, and we'll have lots of live session activity coming as well. Thanks everyone, and I will see you in the chat.